Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Thursday, April 30th, 2020, and today we're going to be taking a look at the 2020 Senate election in the state of Kansas. Now, the reason why this Senate race is so important is because Pat Roberts, the incumbent Republican, is currently retiring, and he did have a pretty notable race back in 2014 that we will discuss further on in the video. So, why does Kansas matter? In 2016, it was overwhelmingly in favor of Donald Trump, with him getting 56% of the vote compared to Hillary Clinton's 36%. It never really was a swing state and only got close in some elections, but has been consistently for the Republican Party. So we're talking about it now because in 2018, the Kansas governor race went to a Democrat. It was unexpected. A lot of the pollsters thought that this race was going to be close. It was always ranked as a toss-up, but it was Kansas. I mean, by the time we reached Election Day, almost all of them had updated it to toss-up because they previously had it in either lean or likely Republican. That's mainly because a lot of the election data started to narrow as we hit Election Day, but Chris Kobach ended up on top on the final poll. So Laura Kelly actually outperformed what was expected. Jeff Koehler was the Republican who won back in 2014, and then it was also a close race, despite 2014 being an overwhelmingly Republican wave year. When you look at the Kansas governor election, it was an area that the Democrats didn't have too much hope in. Sure, it was a toss-up race, but they definitely had a lot more at stake in states such as Florida and a number of other areas that needed to be redistricted in 2020 that they were hoping they would get Democratic victories in. The Democrats did gain a number of seats in the overall governor's map, but at the same time, they had some unexpected victories, and Kansas was definitely one of them. So it isn't the incumbent Democratic governor running for Senate. Why does it matter? Well, on the Democratic side, we have Democrat Barbara Boyer. She is currently a state senator. There aren't really any other notable candidates that have announced that they're going to run. Paul Davis is a potential candidate. He ran in 2014, as you saw. He had a close race, lost by 2%, but Barbara Boyer looks like she's pretty much out on top right now in terms of her endorsements. She has a number of notable state representatives and senators nationwide, so it's not like this race hasn't gotten some attention. Kansas hasn't been on the map mainly because a lot of people expect this one to be lean or likely Republican, but as of right now, the polling data indicates that it could be a close race between the expected Republican nominee and the Democratic expected nominee. So who's the expected Republican nominee? Why are they underperforming and doing so bad in the state of Kansas? Well, it's actually Chris Kobach, the Kansas Secretary of State from 2011 to 2019. Number one, he can do well on a statewide race, or should be able to do well. The reason why a lot of Republicans are afraid of having him as the nominee is because in 2018, he was the Republican who lost. Now, things were supposed to be pretty steady for the GOP as we rode up into the state of Kansas on Election Day. In 2018, I rated this race as, I think, a lean Republican. The only time I ever discussed a possibility of it going down is when Greg Orman actually said that he was going to be running, and, he had a pretty good shot at the 2014 Senate bid, but he ended up only getting 6.5% of the vote. If anything, he was going to hurt the Democratic Party. So Chris Kobach, he got 43% of the vote as a GOP nom, as the incumbent at the time Secretary of State, and that's not a good sign that he did so bad in the 2018 governor election. It wasn't as close as 2014, and it just had to go. Chris Kobach made some mistakes throughout the campaign, and he realistically should not be the Republican nominee if they want a chance at winning this race. Now, obviously, or at least a really good chance at winning this race. He still has a chance if he's a Republican nominee. Donald Trump's going to be on the ballot, and that's going to cause a lot of down-ballot voters. It's going to be an uphill climb for the Democrats by a lot. I mean, Kansas is not one of the ones most likely to flip. If anything, this race, either I would consider it lean or likely, more so likely Republican at this point in time, considering how much of the state is going to be voting in 2020. And again, down ballot races are traditionally in favor of the incumbent political party, because when you're voting Democrat on the top of the ticket, you're likely voting Democrat for the rest of them. Same thing for Republican. But Chris Kobach really could turn off a number of Republicans, enough so that if he's the nominee, the Democrats could get a number of votes, or they could just leave that portion blank. But there is a contested GOP nomination. If you take a look, there's a number of notable people running. In fact, Kansas right now has a lot of money in terms of a Senate race. I mean, nobody really expects a lot of these Republicans to be fundraising so much. And Chris Kobach, despite being number one in the polls, has raised fifth in terms of he's placed fifth in terms of who's raised the most amount of money. The Democrats are on top there with 3.4 million, and then obviously there's more Republican money because there's more more notable Republican candidates in a Republican state. But the number one GOP, frontrunner right now in the Kansas Republican primary is fifth in terms of fundraising. But he's running against a former Kansas City Chief player. A notable guy throughout the state, Roger Marshall, incumbent U.S. representative for a congressional district. I mean, that one's going to be pretty much locked down. And Susan Wagle, who is the president of the Kansas Senate. I mean, she is in the Kansas Senate. She's won a race. She pretty much legislates over the entire GOP in the state of Kansas. So really interesting that everyone is running for the Senate race. I mean, it's an open seat. It's not like they're challenging an incumbent, but there is a clear frontrunner right now. Chris Kobach consistently leads or ties in every poll, though the most recent poll was done through his firm. I mean, Roger Marshall probably is the only guy who could come up close. They haven't done any polls with Dave Lindstrom, so it should be pretty interesting. Let's see what this says. The Kansas GOP chairman, Mike Kugelman, fueling a Kobach victory in part, wrote to Lindstrom asking him to drop out of the race. So they're trying to, avoid Chris Kobach being the nominee. I mean, this is the guy, the Kansas GOP, who's trying to avoid the former Secretary of State from becoming the nominee. And the reason why, again, like I said, he is the easiest guy to beat for the Democrats. Okay, if you look at, I don't know who Barry Grissom is, but this was taken in 2019, so don't give it too much. But generic Republican versus generic Democrat in April 2020, that's this month, 50% to 40%. Okay. But then if you go ahead and take a look at the most recent data, when Chris Kobach's that generic Republican, they lose 8% support. If it was just a regular Republican, obviously there's no technically generic Republican, but if there was one, if there was someone who was just a Republican, just slap an R by their name, they would outperform Chris Kobach. He's such an unpopular official in the state of Kansas. The own GOP chairman in Kansas is trying to avoid him becoming the nominee. Sure, he has a plurality amongst Republican voters, but when you have a plurality amongst Republican voters and 60% of them dislike you and all of the Democrats and independents dislike you, you're in for a big surprise, just like they were in the 2018 Kansas Senate race. Now, when was the last time this seat was up? Well, Greg Orman was an independent who was actually polling ahead of the Republican nominee for quite some time. Off in the early polling data, it was a solid victory for Pat Roberts until the Democrats had decided they would no longer be entering the bid, with Greg Orman pretty much taking it away, leading in almost all of the recent polls throughout all of October and even November. But then, all of a sudden, on Election Day, Pat Roberts won by a pretty substantial amount. Now, when you look, it was rated as a toss-up and lean Republican. I think lean Republican's a little bit closer. This was a likely margin, but Greg Orman definitely underperformed because this was a Republican wave year. If this had happened in 2016, I can almost guarantee Greg Orman would be within 1% to 2% of defeating the incumbent senator. So in 2016, they had a Senate race that coincided with the presidential election. Like I said, Donald Trump being at the top of the ticket definitely helped the Republicans get out support for this nominee, mainly because in a presidential election year, there's a lot more at stake than just one Senate race. You're voting for the president, and when that happens, a lot of people who otherwise may be, if they're angry with the president but still want to see or are optimistic about his next 4 years, well, they might end up voting for him and then a number of Republicans. But if it's a midterm election year and they're not too enthused by what President Trump is doing, or whichever president, if Vice President Biden wins, then I guess soon will be President Biden. They'll just be like, I won't stay home, I will stay home, I won't vote, or I'll vote for a Democrat even as a protest vote, like a lot of Republicans did, which led to a 2018 blue wave. And, that would be something obviously not beneficial to the GOP in this scenario. So if this was actually a midterm year, I can almost guarantee there would be only at most lean Republican rankings, because there would be a need to show the president that you're not happy with the way that he's handling his job. But obviously, Kansas is going to go to the GOP in the presidential election. There was no real shot that the Democrats was going to carry it in the presidential election. But the Senate race, I definitely think could be a very interesting one. If you look, again, like I said, at the OpenSecrets.org page, the Republicans do have more money overall, but the number one nominee, I guess the front runner right now, has not raised even $1 million. Okay, so this guy is surviving purely off of his name recognition, and the GOP is trying to get him out of this race. Just because he's going to be a disastrous nominee, I can almost guarantee that. If Kansas goes to the Democrats, if you flipped one Kansas seat to the Democrats, okay, and then let's say the Democrats pick up Arizona, Okay, that puts the Republicans at 51. Let's say that the Democrats pick up, I guess you could say Colorado, which I know Colorado is almost absolutely certain. That puts a 50-50 tie. If Biden wins, the Democrats have the majority just like that. They didn't need Ohio. They didn't need Iowa. They didn't need North Carolina. They didn't need Georgia or the Georgia special election. They didn't need Texas. Okay, and obviously Kansas isn't the most likely state to go to the Democratic Party, but it is a possibility that it ends up going. Okay, obviously Alabama is probably going to end up going to the GOP, so the GOP is still going to have a majority at that point. The Democrats are going to have to focus on some other states, but just saying right now, if Kansas is up for grabs, that's going to be a really bad sign for the GOP if we're talking about the Senate majority after 2020. Realistically, the Republicans are probably going to end up knocking out Chris Kobach as the nominee. I think that it will be still a close race, but at the same time, it's going to be a Republican victory. I'm almost certain of that. If Chris Kobach is the nominee, I will reassess this race, and it's going to get a lot closer to toss-up, maybe lean Republican. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below, and I will see you all tomorrow.